let's work on perception. Perception. Remember I told you this is kind of a big deal because actually, you know, this is not a big deal just for communication. It's a big deal in general, in life. If you understand how much perception affects everything around you, it will make life a little bit easier, let's put it that way, because you will have a much more realistic way of life. In fact, perception about perception is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
What is perception? How would you define perception? Or what would you say it is? Knowing. Good. So it's not like you just don't know things right away. It takes a little while to figure out. So it's actually kind of more of a process. It's by process by which you learn about things and figure out what they are as time goes by, essentially, right? That's good. That's a good short little, you know, definition. So here's how the authors define it. They basically say that it's the process by which you become aware of objects, events, and especially people through your senses. Takes seeing, smelling, touching, you know, feeling, hearing. So, but it's a bit more complicated than that. It's not just, oh, I saw you, now I know you, or now I perceive you, now I really understand who you are. It's not that simple. There are what we call stages of perception that happens to, and this happens to most people, and maybe a little bit different, and a lot of times you may not be fully aware that this is happening to you, but it's happening to you intuitively without you thinking about it. It's just normal. That's how people are. That's how our minds work. So there's these 5 stages of perception, and the first one is being the stimulation stage. There are things you do not perceive because they do not stimulate you. You don't consider them important. You don't consider them notable. You don't consider them essential, whatever. They don't grab you. Maybe you didn't hear it. Maybe you didn't see it. You didn't notice it. And therefore, you can't perceive it because you haven't really experienced it. So imagine you walk into a room and there's 40 people in a room. You're not going to be able to zero in on every single person at once, right? So tell me, where are you going to zero in on? You're going to look, the very first thing that you're going to look for. You walk into a room, there's 40 people in a room. What is the first thing that you're going to look for? Just tell me. Are you going to look at every single person immediately? Are you going to scan the room, and what are you scanning for? What's going through your mind? Think about it.
The color of wall.
The color of the walls? You don't care about the people in the room? There's 40 people in the room. And who cares about the walls? The walls are always there. It's the people, right? I walk into this room, I got 40 students.
How they look like?
How they what?
Look like.
How they look like. So you start picking out different people based on their looks, right?
Yeah.
So guys will look at the girls first. That's what they do. It's okay. Girls will probably look at the guys first.
Yeah.
And then immediately after looking at the guys, they'll look at the girls. You know why? Competition. You always want to check out the competition, right? Who's in the room? Okay, so I'll have to better look cool because there's some people in the room that I really want to like me, right? And then immediately, who else is in the room? There's competition. I'm just telling you reality, okay? This is how it works. We scan the room immediately. So you walk into a church, right? Big church, 1,000 people. You have to find a place to sit. How are you going to decide? Are you going to go for the first open seat? No. You're going to look who is sitting where.
Yeah.
You're going to say, oh, there's some young people sitting over there. Maybe I'll go sit with them. There's a bunch of old people sitting over there. I'm not going to sit with them. Why? Because you don't have anything to do with them. You don't know who they are. They're not like you. You want to be with people who are like you. And that's okay. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. The point is I want you to realize your mind is selecting. You're being stimulated by what you see, and your mind is going through the options, and your mind is pushing you and leading you into a direction. Your process of perception kicks in. It starts working. You pay attention to only select things. You saw some young people, you go towards them. But what you didn't see, and there was another group of young people sitting over there, and they're actually cooler. But you didn't see them because you were focused on these ones, because they were close to the door to which you came in. So that's what you do. Selective ability to see, selective exposure, selective attention. Sometimes, you know, things that we focus on are the things that jump out at us. So you walk into a room and everyone is wearing black and gray, and all of a sudden one person is wearing red. What do you want to bet? You're going to look at that person first. I'm willing to bet money you're going to look at that person first. Why? Because they're the only person wearing red. Only person. And your mind automatically is going to go that way, whether you want it or not. You don't even want to, but your mind's going to go, person is wearing red. And you didn't notice all the other people. For that second, they did not matter. That only one person, because they're different, you notice them. So sometimes, that's what happens. Our mind perceives that which is attractive, or odd, or strange, or unusual first. Then everything else. Whatever we don't deem in those categories kind of falls off, you know. But that's important to understand how we do it. So once we walked into a room and looked at the crowd of people, we start figuring out who's who. This is what we call organization stage. You start assigning roles to people. Oh, that one's got to be a professor. You know, look at him. You know, he's got to be a professor. That's going to be another student. That one is so and so. That one is so and so. You start figuring out who's who. And you start putting people in boxes now. You start categorizing, organizing. It's like a library. You put them on the right shelf. In your mind is like a giant library. And you put this person, because of the way they look, or because of how you think they look, makes them look sort of like other people that you have seen in this category. You put them in a box, or put a label on them, stick them on the right shelf. That's what your mind does without you realizing it. So you start categorizing things. And of course, there are several rules over here that the authors highlight, is that there's rule of proximity, rule of similarity, and rule of contrast. What these rules have to do with is you start organizing things based on how close you are to them, okay? Or based on what you know they are like. So if you've met somebody who is a lot like that, you put them into the same category because they're a lot like that. So you're like, I've met Bill, he's an American, that guy looks American, he's just like Bill. That's it, you just put them together. They can be nothing alike, but you put them together because Bill is the other American you know. The only other American you know. So all of a sudden, they're together, where they really shouldn't be related because they're nothing alike. But in your mind, fair or unfair, you group them together. And now you catalog them. You know, that's it. So there's rules of similarity or rules of contrast. Contrast is basically when they're nothing alike. This person is like this person, but that person is not. Now, I'm talking about people right now. You could do the same thing with objects. We can talk about going to the mall, and you'd be doing the same thing in the mall. Perception. You're walking into a shoe store. What grabs your attention? That which you consider to be attractive. You know, maybe you're looking for a price, maybe you're looking for a brand, I don't know. But whatever you consider important, that's what your mind's going to grab. Then you can categorize it. That's a good price, that's not a good price. That's a good deal, that's not a good deal. You're making a judgment, you're categorizing it automatically. Put a label on it, stick it in the category. That's what we do. That's perception. Now, there's the next stage that comes in, and that's more of an evaluation and interpretation stage. It's like there's two words to that one. But basically that's when you say, this is what's here. Now that I know what it is, I put it in the box, I put a label on it. Now I'm going to decide if it's good or bad. That's a good deal. That's not a good deal. That's a good price. That's not a good price. You know, for a pair of Nikes, that's an excellent price. For a pair of Skechers, same price? No way. All of a sudden, what are you doing? You're making judgments. You're making evaluations. You're saying this is good, this is not good. You walk into a room, you see too many people, that's not good, too crowded, you know. You walk into a party, you see 3 people, you say, that's not good, that's not crowded enough. That's not gonna be fun. There's 3 people at this party. I want 30 people, you know. You make judgments, you make evaluations based on what your eyes can see now that you've kind of assigned meaning to it. This means that, good or bad. So, and a lot of times we make these judgments based on what? Based on our life experiences, based on things that we have lived through before, based on what we know, based on what we want it to be, right? We make our judgments about good or bad based on what we believe or what we expect to happen in such and such place. So all of that. We have our physical needs, our emotional needs that play into what we think is good or bad. You know, if I'm hungry for sushi and you take me into a restaurant that doesn't have any sushi, am I going to be happy? No, I'm going to say that's not good. You took me to a steak restaurant. I really wanted sushi. Too bad, right? The restaurant you took me was good, but I say it's bad. Why? Because my physical needs, my emotional needs, I say I want sushi. So it's bad for me. Doesn't mean the restaurant is bad, but at that moment, I'm not happy about it. I don't feel good about it. So my perception, my judgment, not good. See? Doesn't mean anything about the restaurant at all. It's all about how I perceive it. So to me, that moment is not good. So you see how tricky perception can be. Perception is not always a reflection of reality. Perception is what we believe it to be, or how we best figure things out in our own mind, which does not necessarily make it true. It just makes it how we appreciate it, how we understand it. That's not always reality. Okay? So the authors highlight that gender influences evaluations and perceptions. Yes, they absolutely do. Let me see. Experiment. The color of the walls. What do you think? What do you think the color of the walls is in here right now?
White, pink.
White, pink? White?
White, pink.
White, pink. Now why some people are saying white and other people are saying pink? I'm going to tell you this. The secret is females are actually able to see much more color than males. A lot of guys would say this is white. I would be hard-pressed to find females who would say this is white. They would say white, but not really white. It's more of a pink. Very, very light pink. That's what they would say. I mean, I've struggled to see pink in it, because most of the time, I believed that this room was white for a long time, until just now, when I actually took a really close look. I realized it. This is our perception. This is how we feel. This is, you know, and gender can influence our perception. What you think is good or bad, or, you know, pretty or not pretty, gender can influence it. So judgments also about our other people's cultures can influence us. If we think that a certain culture, we have a certain negative view of a particular culture, then we can judge every single person from that culture as negative. It's called stereotypes. You know, we do that. We do that all the time. All of us do it. We're all guilty. Okay? We are. We just need to recognize it. It's okay. We can own it. We can minimize it, but we're guilty of it. We judge. We stereotype everything. This is a good price. That's not a good price. This is a good brand. This is a bad brand. We do the same thing with people. We see a guy who looks Arabic, and we're like, oh, terrorist. Right? Why do we do that? Because a lot of people who do terrorism are Arabs, so therefore, terrorist. And he's not a terrorist. He's a nice guy. But terrorist, because I've seen one on TV, and it looks exactly like him, right? We do that. We do that. It's unfair. It's unfair, but we do that. So a lot of times our judgments are based on culture, because our culture tells us something is good. Our culture tells us something is bad. Media tells us something is good. Media tells us something is bad, and we buy it. And we live with it. So there's a memory stage where we kind of store this information in our memory. After we have understood it, categorized it, placed it in a box, said this is good or bad, we say, okay, file it in a memory file. And next time, we'll retrieve it when the time comes to it. Because we'll use this information, we tag it with a very specific tag, and then later on, that tag will come up in our mind in another conversation somewhere else. So in the recall stage, we'll bring that information back up. And what we will often recall may not be actually accurate of what it was, because guess what? We didn't see reality, we saw perception. I walked into a room, here's an American, I know Bill, Bill's an American, that guy's like Bill. Now forever in my mind, for however long, that guy's gonna be associated with Bill, which he's not, but in my mind he is. So when I remember that guy, or I remember Bill, I'm gonna remember that guy. They have nothing to do with each other, but what happens is, this is perception. I can't get it out of my head. It's tied, that's how it got categorized. And so then I'll be asked a year later to reconstruct what I saw in that room, and I'm gonna tell you things based on my perception, not based on what actually happened, based on how I felt about it, based on how I understood the situation, which may not be accurate at all. Which is why when police interview people about eyewitness testimony, it doesn't always line up. It's because perception. Perception is unique to individuals, and it's not uniform. So here are those stages, the 5 stages of perception. They're in your textbooks as well. Hopefully that's helpful to you guys. I just want you to, for the purpose of, just know these stages, know what they're all about. You don't need to know every single thing about the stage, but as long as these concepts that we talked about, the self-awareness, self-perception, self-disclosure, I want you to be able to articulate what it means, and I want you to know what's involved in it. Because as far as quizzes are concerned or anything like that, you will see this information come across to you again, but I'm not going to be specifically asking you. But if you don't quite know what is what, you're going to get confused. So if you couldn't tell me what's the difference between, self-esteem and self-disclosure, then you're in trouble. Let's put it that way. But if you understand the difference and you can explain it to me, then you'll have no trouble answering my questions. That's what I'm saying. So it's important for you to know these stages, but you don't have to know every single little thing about it. It's kind of big picture idea. All right. So perception is very key, and this is kind of a subtopic of perception, is our impression formation. We form impressions, as we said. We perceive the world, we experience the world, we form certain impressions. So impression formation sometimes is referred to as person perception. And it also refers to the process that you go through in forming an impression of another individual, of another person. So that's what impression formation really means. Again, it's just another form of perception. A lot of times how we experience the world, how we see everything in life, is fueled by these processes of perception. One of them, for example, is self-fulfilling prophecy. You guys ever heard of the self-fulfilling prophecy? So the idea is very simple. If you believe something to be, something is going to be bad, you expect it to be bad, you go, let's say somebody invited you to a party and you don't really want to go. You're like, it's going to be a lame party. It's going to be awful, it's going to be terrible. And you expect it to be bad, and you expect the food to be bad, you expect the people to show up to be boring. You're going to get to that party, and the party's going to be pretty good, actually. But because you've talked yourself into believing that it's going to be bad, you're not going to have a good time. You're actually going to feel that the party was not great, even though everybody else is going to think it's awesome. But because you have psyched yourself up for thinking it's not going to be good, you're actually going to believe it, and that's how you're going to walk away. That's going to be your impression. Let's say if somebody told you, Professor Shirako's class is the worst class possible. He is so hard, he's awful, he's terrible, he's going to tear you up and have you for lunch. And you come to my class, and you learn these things, and you are already set up to have a bad experience. Why? Because somebody told you that you're going to have a bad experience, and you're afraid of that, and so you come in, and you're not having fun, you're not enjoying it, you're hating it, the whole experience. Why? It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, what we call it. But basically, once you believe something about something, it can actually feel to you as that, because you have prepared your mind to accept it as such. And so then everything you see is bad. You don't see anything good at all. All you see is bad, because it's already set up for you. So that's one of the problems that we have with self-fulfilling prophecies. Unfortunately, we're human beings, and that's what happens to us. Now, another aspect of our perceptual process and our impression formation, how we figure things out, is the primacy and recency effect. Whether something is just happened, or whether something is really, really important and influential, affects us, how we perceive the world, okay? Believe it or not, most of the time, when somebody makes a speech or something like that, the only thing that people may remember about a speech is the very first line of that speech. Or they remember the very last line of that speech. Why? Because primacy, meaning what I say now in the very beginning, is the most important thing. So you focus on that. And then after that, you fall asleep. Or, what I just said in the very, very end, you can remember because I just said it. It's still in your mind. It's still with you. So our perception tends to play tricks on us in a sense that we remember that which was said first, or that which was stressed the most in the beginning, or we remember what was said last. Okay? In the song, what do you remember? The chorus. You don't remember the bridge. You might remember the verse lyrics, but you really remember is the chorus. Why? Because repeated over and over and over. And why? Because it's deemed to be the central message. It's deemed to be the most important part of the song. So that's what you remember. Just how our mind works. Same thing in perception. As we experience the world, we remember the first primary thing, most important thing that was stressed, or the very last thing that just happened. So it's how it's with everything in life. Now, another aspect is stereotyping. And this is a problem that we all deal with. When we have sometimes very fixed, very set, and distorted impression of a group of people. Stereotyping usually has to do with people. We stereotype people, cultures, ethnicities, a lot of times, or types of people. If you see a certain variety of a person, you put that person into his own little category of other people of that variety, not allowing the possibility that that person is completely different and does not fit into whatever is in your mind. So we have these rigid ideas about people sometimes in our mind, and they're distorted, and they're not fair. And usually it's our culture that feeds us those ideas, okay? And we buy it, and we run with it, and we believe it, and that's how we judge the world around us. You know? For example, I'm walking down the street, right? It's dark. It's an alley. I see 3 girls coming towards me. Not really tall or anything like that. Do you think I'm going to be afraid? What do you think? You think I'm going to be afraid? 3 girls? He goes, yeah. That's fine. That's good. What do you think? Think I'll be afraid? My culture would tell me, don't be afraid, they're girls. Girls are not violent. Girls don't rob people on the corner of the street. Right? And if I thought 3 young men with hats tilted the wrong way, saggy, baggy pants, whatever, kind of shuffling around towards me, kind of like a whole gangster rap looking crew, and I'd be like running the other direction, thinking I'm going to get mugged, I'm going to get robbed, I'm going to get killed, whatever. I don't know. I'll be afraid. Now what I don't know is what I don't know. I don't know anything. I don't know that those 3 girls have black belts. Okay? And they can have me on the floor in 3 seconds, and I have no idea. You know, but my perception is girls are non-violent, they're not a problem. You know, or those 3 girls can have guns. And those 3 guys, you know, with baggy pants, they have no guns. They got nothing. They just got attitude. You know, you don't know. They walk up to me, they don't know if I have a gun. And I just pull it out on them. And then they run. See, they're gonna rob me. No, actually, I'm gonna corner them and rob them. You know, you don't know these things. So perception, stereotyping, a lot of times leads us to making conclusions that are, because images projected in our mind, we just believe them and trust them what they are, which they can be completely inaccurate and incorrect. And that is our problem on many levels. There are good stereotypes and there are bad stereotypes, by the way. You guys, all right, you know any stereotypes about Asians? Do Asians have stereotypes? Like, there are certain things that people say about Asians that's maybe unfair. Good or bad stereotypes? Can you think of anything? Have you been stereotyped before? Have somebody imposed upon you something because of the way you look or where you come from that's not really true of you? Any examples? Have you been stereotyped?
Oh, I have.
Okay.
Actually, in America or other Western countries,
Mhm.
if I look like Asian, they think I am a Chinese.
Of course. Because what other kind of Asians are there?
Yeah.
There are no other people in Asia except Chinese, right? That's what people will tell you. So, oh, okay, you look Asian, you must be Chinese. Happened to you? Oh, Chinese? No? See, not fair, right? Not fair. Did you give them any reason to think you're Chinese? No. Yeah, but to American, all Asians are Chinese. Not fair, again. Doesn't make it right, but it's culture. And people learn these things, and they can't unlearn them. Just kind of affects them that way. All right, so that's good. So here's a stereotype you're going to get in America if you haven't gotten it yet. All Asians are good at math. In your math class, watch it. Your teacher might be hard on you just because of the way you look. He's an American especially. Because all Asians are supposed to be smart and good at math. You know that? If you didn't know that, if you're bad at math, that's really bad for you. Because you're expected to be really smart and good at math. Is that fair? No, but people are actually going to expect that you're going to be really good at math. Just because you're Asian or because you look Asian. You could be not Asian. You could be American who looks Asian because your grandfather came from Asia. In fact, you've never been to Asia. You don't speak Korean or Chinese or Japanese or anything. You know nothing about Asian culture. Yet people are going to judge you like that. So I have a friend who was adopted at a young age from China. And he came here when he was just a few months old. He doesn't know anything about China or Chinese people. Can't write, can't read, can't do any of that stuff. Okay? But he looks 100% Chinese. You just like, you look at him, it's like, wow. Of course, he dresses American and everything like that, speaks perfect English, everything is fine. But as people look at him, like, Chinese? And he would get annoyed all the time, you know. Chinese. He's like, I don't know anything about Chinese culture. Yes, I am Chinese ethnically, genetically, in every other way. But he's like, I grew up here. All I know is America. I don't know anything else about Asia. And he didn't have any Asian friends to make it worse. So it's like, he doesn't really even understand half the time what people are talking to him about. So it's it's unfair, but that's what we do, stereotyping. So, any other stereotypes that you guys think of? So, any Asian stereotypes that are unfair that people say about you? Could be true, could be like true of some people, but not true of everyone, right? And remember, it could be positive or negative. People could say all Asians are this, and it could be a negative thing, or they could say all Asians are that. It could be a positive thing, like all Asians are good at math. I think that's a pretty good stereotype. It's not really saying anything bad about a person, it's actually good. Although majority of stereotypes are probably negative. So any other ones? Okay. You guys are gonna have to do better with me. Gonna give me some examples from life to make this real. All right, another one is attribution of control. This is something that people do to explain why somebody did something else. Well, there's a lot of times that we perceive the world and we see people behave in a way, one way or another way. And we say, why do they do that? And then we come up with an explanation. Oh, they did that because this and this and this and that. And that's what we call attribution. To attribute something is to explain something or give a reason for. Let's put it that way. So that's what attribution is. There are three most common errors of attribution. This is self-serving bias, over-attribution, and fundamental attribution error, which basically has come down to where we interpret certain things a certain way because that serves us. We want for that person to do this for that reason. We want to be right about it, basically. So we just say, oh, they did it because of that. And it serves us well because it fits in our world and our own understanding of the world. So that's okay. Over-attribution is a lot of times when we take a feature of another person's life or personality and we stretch it too far. We could say, oh, he's good at math because he's Asian. That explains it all. That's the reason why. It's not he's good at math because he studied really hard. He's good at math because he's Asian. I'm like, okay, that's over-attribution. That's like taking something that's not really truly a reason for somebody being a certain way and saying that's the reason why. So, and then there's fundamental attribution errors where it basically have to do with us completely misreading the situation and not understanding what's going on, but yet assigning meaning to it. So how do you fix some of these problems that we talked about? How do you deal, all right, with not being able to perceive the world in a proper way? Because we talked about these issues that block us from being able to understand the world properly. Well, you can do a number of things. You can analyze your impressions of people a little bit better, and then you can check your perceptions. You can verify your perceptions. Basically, you have to be thoughtful about what you are seeing and what you're experiencing. You have to scrutinize it a little bit more, not be quick. So you can reduce your uncertainty because a lot of times people can just say, oh, I'm not comfortable with the situation, so I'm just going to deal with it quickly and be done with it. You can observe people, you watch people, figure out what they really are by their behavior. You can, let's see, let me explain, let's see, how can I explain this? Analyzing your impressions really has to do with saying, why am I perceiving this way? You know, is this fair? Is this a fair caricature? Or am I projecting something on this person that's not truly, you know, fair? So a lot of times we perceive the world incorrectly because we do not stop to think why we perceive the world that way. So you have to ask a question, you know, why am I thinking this way? Is this accurate? Is this really true? Or am I being too quick to judge, basically? Because sometimes we are judging, okay? And we're just like, oh, that's it, you know, put it in the category, put it in the shelf. And you're like, wait a minute, let's give them another chance. So if you avoid making conclusions very early, and if you seek verification of something, kind of like watch people or see other things that happen that may say, yes, what you believed about them is true, or they may point in another direction and say, wait a minute, that doesn't line up, you know. So, and then, you know, ask yourself questions. Sometimes in analyzing our impressions, we get caught in the trap of what we call just world trap, just world hypothesis. And it's like this. Good people are supposed to have good things happen to them. And bad people are supposed to have bad things happen to them. So therefore, if bad thing happened to this person, well, that means they're a bad person. It's crazy. He's like going like, oh, what is that? What is that? It's called a just world hypothesis. Now, Westerners struggle with this a lot more than the Easterners do, okay? But basically, good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. Therefore, If you see somebody in an unfortunate situation, well, that's their own fault. That happened to them because they're a bad person, you know, which is completely unfair and completely untrue, because in reality, good things happen to good and bad people, and bad things happen to good and bad people. It doesn't really matter. But this whole just world hypothesis is a really big problem in Western culture, because that's how people see the world. And so they judge everyone around them based on that. Very, very unfair. So it's a big issue. So you can check your perceptions by looking for clarification sometimes. You could say, if somebody's saying something to you and you kind of get an impression that this is what they're saying, but you're not 100% sure, you can always ask them to clarify. Is this what you mean? It's very simple. You know, if a friend to you says, all right, I'll see you at 7 o'clock. And you're like, 7 o'clock today or 7 o'clock tomorrow? 7 o'clock in the evening or 7 o'clock in the morning? See what happens? What I'm verifying to make sure that I understood you right. I may actually know what you're talking about, but just to be sure that we're talking about the same thing, I'm going to verify. I'm going to confirm that what you're saying is really true. And there's no offense in that, in me saying, you know, hey, I just want to be clear. I just want to know for a fact that this is what we're talking about. Because sometimes we can be really badly mistaken when we don't do that. So clarification is really good. And a lot of times in our perception, it's the same exact thing. We can ask to clarify. A person may come off a certain way to us, and we base our impression about them on that first initial impression. And we could say, you know what, let me give them another chance. Let me see how they do this. Sometimes people have been known to have techniques, sort of say, to figure out what's going on with a person by putting them in a particular situation and seeing how they react. That's what I suggest for people when they're dating. You know, every once in a while I see people date and they get all excited about each other, and I said, well, you know, number one, take your time, because you know, you will get to know this person over a period of time. Number two, why don't you put yourself in a stressful situation with that person? I was telling that. Put yourself in a stressful situation with that person and see how they react. Oh, he's the most amazing guy ever. He's just this, and that. I said, put him in a stressful situation. Bring him over to meet your parents, you know, and make sure have an uncle who doesn't really like him. See how he reacts. Can he handle it? You know, put him in a situation where their car broke down and their cell phone doesn't work, and this happened and that happened, and it got bit by a dog, and all of a sudden you see this person losing their mind, going crazy, blaming everyone for everything, and then all of a sudden they're not a great person anymore. Why? Because you just saw a side of them under stress. So a lot of times people in a perfect environment, they present themselves a certain way, but in an environment of stress, they don't come through. They actually fail. They fail. So their real self comes out. The hidden part that they don't want to show you, all of a sudden, boom, out on display. So a lot of times in a job interview, they do this, where they ask you questions in a job interview that you would normally not know to answer. Or they will say, in some tech companies, I've known them to do this, okay? You say that you have this education, you say that you're an expert in this and this, you're a programmer, right? They go, here's the laptop, hack it. Hack the website right now. And they have to prove it. Right there and right then. That's a stressful situation. And seeing how the person reacts, the very first few seconds already tells you more about the person than they would ever, any resume would ever tell you. They'll give you a problem, say, okay, solve it. And all of a sudden, how a person reacts. Or they will give you a hypothetical problem, you know, and seeing how you answer how you answer a question like that. You know, people test your character, people test perceptions, because it's very easy to fool somebody with a faulty perception just by giving them a good resume or something like that. But when it actually comes to real life, they can't manage it, or they can't control it, or they fall apart. They don't really have what it takes. So You can always verify these things. Conduct your own little experiments, you know. So I've always done this with my college roommates, by the way, because they always ask me to like, hey, can you loan me money? Can you loan me money? So I'm like, okay. Next week I go back to them. Can you loan me money? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I loaned you money last week. What's wrong? I trusted you. You can't trust me back? Okay. Maybe we shouldn't be friends anymore. You know? Because there's a problem in this relationship. You know? You test people. You do things like that. You can create your own little tests because that's what perception is. Perception can be faulty. All I want you guys to realize that impressions, perceptions, all of that can be a problem. So you can reduce some of your uncertainty. There are degrees in which you can become more astute, better in perception, better in understanding the world. And also, I would suggest one of the biggest things that the authors of this textbook talk about is increasing your cultural sensitivity. You are going to be around people of other cultures and other ways of life, and increasing your cultural sensitivity is what's going to allow you to understand why people do what they do and why they act the way they act. Okay, so that's a big one. The more you can know about other people's cultures, the more you will be able to understand them correctly and not misjudge them. Okay. So there's actually a whole course that a lot of times we teach here as called Interpersonal Cross-Cultural Communication, and I definitely recommend that course. It's really good stuff. What you learn is really good. There are some strategies that the textbook gives you. Particularly, the strategy I want to highlight, I got just a few minutes, okay, in impression management that I wanted to highlight is the affinity seeking and politeness strategies, okay? To get along with people in the world, sometimes you have to seek to have affinity and politeness. People have to like you. You want to be liked. I mean, who doesn't want to be liked? Anybody in this room wants to be not liked? I think all of us want to be liked, right? So there are certain strategies that will increase your chances of being liked. So what are they? Right? There you go. Number one, appear active, enthusiastic, and dynamic. Now again, I realize that I'm talking to a culture that may not value it this way, but in the West, if you do not appear active or enthusiastic or dynamic, we don't like you. Is that a new revelation for you? Is that new? I'm just telling you, this is how it works. That's the reality. It's harsh reality. You may say, that's not really me. Learn how to be a little bit more like that. And all of a sudden, you'll notice how people will perceive you differently. All of a sudden, you'll be liked in the West. This is a Western list, right? So, follow the cultural rules, be polite, cooperative, respectful in conversation. Now that, you guys wouldn't have a problem because Easterners are way more polite than most Westerners. Okay? Easterners bow, Easterners greet each other in a formal way, add special titles to people's names and things like that, where Westerners tend to be more casual. That's the really important part. Everybody likes people who are respectful to somebody else and recognize them properly. So that's a big deal. Communicate interest in the other person. This is a really important in interpersonal communication. Eye contact, interest. When the person is talking to you, look them right in the eyes. You nod. You confirm that you're hearing them. You're saying, yes, I get you, I understand you, like react some sort of way. Ask them questions about their life. Ask them questions about what's happening with them at the moment. That shows interest, that shows you care. People like other people who care about them. The big truth is, fundamentally, people are very selfish. And if somebody cares about us, that means the world to us, because we care about us. So it's a big deal. And again, you want to be liked. This is a strategy. I'm not saying don't be genuine, but if you show concern or care about another person, I guarantee you they're going to like you. I guarantee you that's going to put you in a likable category. Present yourself as comfortable and relaxed. Now again, this is very important for Americans. Americans like to be comfortable and relaxed, therefore they want other people to present themselves as comfortable and relaxed. Okay? So coming from an Asian culture, people do not tend to present themselves that way. They're much more reserved, very strict. Their movements are restricted. The gestures are restricted. You control what you let out, so to say. In your mind, there could be all sorts of things going on. But what you let the world see is very controlled in an Asian culture, where in America it's kind of more relaxed. And that's what people want to see. When they see you relaxed, they're comfortable around you. If they see you uptight, they don't know what's going on. Okay? So being kind of relaxed and easygoing in that sense, people value that. Again, it's a way of being liked. Stimulate and encourage the other person to talk about himself or herself. This is a feature of being liked. Like I said, we like to talk about ourselves. We do. Reinforce his or her disclosures and contributions. So if somebody tells you something about themselves, reinforce that. Okay? How do you reinforce a disclosure? You offer your own disclosure. Right? Like I say, I may come this morning to class and I say, it's been such a crazy morning. I got stuck in traffic. It was awful. What did I just do? I just disclosed to you that I'm frustrated this morning, that I didn't have a good morning drive, that something annoyed me in the traffic, whatever, things went on the road that made me unhappy. What you would do in response and say, yeah, me too, the same thing. I've been traveling like way too long. My road is really long or something like that. And you just a small little commiseration, understanding, hey, yeah, I understand, I care. Or if you volunteer how bad your morning was, oh, that's even better, because now we're together, we're in the same boat. Now you feel like I feel, and you understand me and I understand you, and we're buds, right? And all of a sudden, at least on this area of life, we have unity. It makes me feel good, it makes you feel good. That's what I'm talking about. That's, basically reinforcing people's disclosures. Appearing optimistic and positive is a big deal. People do not like pessimistic people and negative people. I will tell you honestly, Americans hate that when they say something and another person's like, oh, that'll never work. Hey, you can't do that. No, that will not work. Even though that may be true, they don't like that. Nobody wants to hear that something cannot be done or that their idea sucks. Nobody wants to hear that their idea sucks. You just affirm them and find a way to tell it to them that it won't work in another way. That's not indirect. Again, it's about being liked, not about being right. Okay? Being right is one thing. Being liked is a different story. We're talking about affinity strategy of how to be liked. Okay? Appear honest, reliable, and interesting. So yeah, again, that's a big one. Arrange circumstances for frequent contact. You want to be liked, make sure you bump into that person that you want to like you from time to time, and you have contact. Because guess what? Out of sight, out of mind. We have a saying in America. Out of sight, out of mind. And it's very true. That means if I don't see you, I don't really even know that you exist. And therefore, how can I possibly like a person that I don't even know exists? But if I bump into you all the time, and we have little tiny exchanges, even just a little interaction, like, hey, how's it going? Little things that you make me think of you in a positive way, then I'm going to like you. Just little tiny things. But if I don't see you for 8 months, I'm like, this guy doesn't exist. Because out of sight, out of mind. So sometimes if you want to be liked, you have to make sure that your contact is frequent enough so that you can have a feeling of a person towards you. Otherwise, they won't have any feelings towards you at all. Good or bad, actually. Communicate warmth, supportiveness, and empathy. Again, this is affirming another person in whichever way you can and saying, I understand, I care, yes, that's too bad if they're complaining, or way to go if they're sharing something awesome that's happened to them, cheering them on. It's important. and then demonstrating your that you share some of the values with them. If people sense that they are like you or you are like them, they will like you intuitively. If there are shared values that you can see. Sometimes we have very few values we share, right? Sometimes we're nothing like another person. But what if you could find something that that person and you have in common, and you highlight that? You can. You can actually make yourself liked by a person who's nothing like you at all. It could be the most superficial thing, but that is one thing they'll remember. It could be like, oh, we both like Nikes, or something like that. It's stupid. That doesn't make you anything like me at all, but we both like Nikes, so that's it. So now forever, I remember you as a guy who also liked Nikes, so at least we have something in common. Don't mind the million things that we're nothing alike. But that one thing, we're together. And if that's what I remember about you, guess what? I already like you, even though I don't know you. Because you like the right kind of brand of shoe. You know? It's silly, but that's how people's minds work. Again, so we're talking about strategies of being liked. Okay?